The council chamber stretched wide and tall, built to hold representatives from 50 different alien species. Jake Harrison stood near the human section, watching the diplomats argue. They had been arguing for 3 hours now. The Vryn people were dying, and no one wanted to help them. The Vryn were small, peaceful traders. They moved goods between star systems and caused trouble for no one. But their neighbors, the Krell Empire, wanted their space stations. The Krell had big warships and strong armies. The Vryn had cargo ships and trading posts. It was not a fair fight. "Why should we care?" asked a tall insectoid counselor. His name was Zexthor, and his species controlled 12 solar systems. "The Vryn have nothing to offer us. No resources, no technology, no military power." Other counselors agreed. In the galaxy, everything was a trade. You helped someone only if they could help you back. The Vryn could not help anyone. They were too small and too weak. Linda Morris, the senior human ambassador, raised her hand. The room grew quiet. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. Most species had been doing it for thousands of years. "We will help the Vryn," Linda said. Her voice was calm and clear. The council chamber erupted in noise. Species from every corner of the room started talking at once. Some laughed. Some looked confused. One counselor from a species that looked like floating jellyfish said, "Have the humans gone mad? What do the Vryn have that you want?" Jake stepped forward. He carried a small device in his hand. "May I show you something?" he asked. The council leader, an ancient being made of living crystal, nodded. Jake activated the device. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a database with millions of entries. "This is the Remembrance Archive," Jake explained. "We have kept it since the day we first met alien life. It records every favor, every kindness, and every helpful act that any species has shown to humanity." He touched the controls. The hologram zoomed in on one entry. It was dated 174 years ago. 3 human explorers had a ship malfunction in deep space, Jake continued. They were far from home, and their water recycling system broke. They sent a distress signal, but no one answered. They thought they would die. The hologram showed an old video. 3 humans floated in a small, damaged ship. They looked scared and weak. Then a Vryn merchant ship received their signal. The merchant captain was named Telix. He was alone on a small trading vessel. He had just enough water for himself to reach the next station. The video showed a Vryn alien entering the human ship. The Vryn looked like a mix between a turtle and a bird, with smooth skin and bright eyes. "Telix shared his water with our people," Jake said quietly. "He gave them half of everything he had. It meant he would be thirsty for days, but he did it anyway. He saved their lives and asked for nothing in return." The council chamber was silent now. Everyone watched the old video. They saw the Vryn pouring water into containers for the humans. They saw the gratitude on the human faces. "One of those explorers was my great-grandfather," Jake said. "He lived to be 90 years old. He told this story to his children, who told it to their children. We never forgot what Telix did." Zexthor made a dismissive sound. "A touching story, but that was one merchant. He is long dead. Why does this matter now?" Linda stood beside Jake. "Because Telix was Vryn. His kindness was the first act of compassion any Vryn showed to humanity. We remember it. We honor it. And now we will repay it." "This is irrational," said another counselor. "You would risk your ships and your soldiers for an old story?" "We will risk everything," Linda said, "because that is what you do for people who help you when you have nothing." Captain Ben Tucker, the human fleet commander, appeared on a communication screen. He was on a warship somewhere in space. "Ambassador Morris, the fleet is ready. 20 ships, fully armed. We await your orders." The council erupted again. 20 human warships was a significant force. Humans had been building their military quietly for decades. Now everyone could see how strong they had become. "You cannot be serious," Zexthor said. "The Krell Empire will declare war on you." "Perhaps," Linda replied, "but we made a promise 174 years ago. We may not have said it out loud, but we made it in our hearts. When someone saves your life, you owe them everything." The Crystal Council leader leaned forward. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "I have watched many species for many centuries. I have never seen anything like this. You humans confuse me." Jake smiled a little. "We confuse ourselves sometimes. But we know one thing for certain. We remember every favor, every kindness. Every moment when someone chose to help us instead of walking away, and we repay those debts, always." "Even after 100 years?" asked the jellyfish counselor. "Even after 1,000 years," Linda answered. "Time does not erase gratitude. It only makes it stronger." The council voted that day, but it did not matter. The humans had already decided. Their ships were already moving toward Vryn space. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. They kept records. They remembered everything. And when they said they would repay a favor, they meant it in ways no one could predict. As Jake left the council chamber, he touched the memory crystal in his pocket. It held a recording of his great-grandfather telling the story of Telex the Vryn merchant. The old man's voice was still clear after all these years. "Remember this day," his great-grandfather had said on the recording. "Remember that someone showed us mercy when they did not have to. And if you ever get the chance, you pay it back. You pay it back 1,000 times over." Jake smiled. They were about to do exactly that. Admiral Greg Palmer stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the view screen. 20 human warships moved through space in perfect formation. They were 3 days from Vryn space, and the Krell Empire knew they were coming. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Krell command ship," said a young officer. "Put it through," Greg replied. A Krell general appeared on the screen. The Krell looked like armored lizards that walked on 2 legs. This one had scars across his face and wore medals on his chest. "Human vessels, you are entering a restricted zone. Turn back now or face destruction." Greg smiled politely. "General, we are here to assist our friends, the Vryn people. We suggest you withdraw your forces from their territory." The Krell general laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "Your friends? The Vryn are nothing. They are weak. They have no military. No one cares about them. Why do you care?" "Because they cared about us once," Greg said simply. "That is enough." The general stopped laughing. "You would start a war over sentiment, over old stories? This is foolish." "Perhaps," Greg agreed, "but it is our foolishness, and we stand by it." The transmission ended. The Krell ships began moving into attack positions. Greg turned to his crew. "All ships, prepare for engagement. Protect the Vryn at all costs." On the surface of the Vryn homeworld, Dr. Sophie Grant walked through the main city with Kyle Morrison, the intelligence officer. The city was beautiful but fragile. The buildings were made of colored glass and light metals. Everything looked delicate, like it could break easily. The Vryn matriarch met them at the council building. She was old for her species, with skin that had faded from bright blue to pale gray. Her eyes, however, were still sharp and clear. "Dr. Grant, I do not understand," the matriarch said. "Why are your people doing this? We cannot repay you. We have no weapons to give you, no rare minerals, no advanced technology." Sophie smiled gently. "Matriarch, can I tell you a story?" They sat in a quiet room with windows that overlooked the city. Sophie pulled out a small holographic projector. She showed the matriarch the video of Telex and the 3 human explorers. "This happened a very long time ago," Sophie explained, "before most of us were born. But we remember it. We teach it to our children. Your people showed kindness when they did not have to." The matriarch watched the video carefully. Tears formed in her large eyes. "I knew Telex. He was my uncle. He told this story many times, but we thought it was just something nice he did. We did not think it mattered." "It mattered to us," Sophie said softly. "It mattered so much that we have been preparing for this day for decades." Kyle Morrison opened his datapad. "Matriarch, we have been running intelligence operations in Krell space for 20 years. We knew they would eventually move against you. We have been planning our response ever since." 20 years? The matriarch looked shocked. "But why? Why spend so much time and effort on us?" "Because that is what humans do," Sophie explained. "We remember favors. We track them. We plan for them. And when the time comes, we repay them. Not equally, but beyond what was given." In space above the planet, the battle had begun. Krell warships opened fire on the human fleet. The human ships moved with precision, their shields absorbing the attacks. Greg Palmer watched the tactical display and gave orders calmly. "Target their command ship. Disable their weapons, but do not destroy them. We are here to protect, not to conquer." The human weapons were more advanced than the Krell expected. Precise beams struck the Krell ships, shutting down their weapon systems, but leaving the ships intact. Within an hour, half the Krell fleet was floating helplessly in space. The Krell general called again. "How do you have such technology? You are a young species. You should not be this strong." Greg looked at the general seriously. "We are strong because we prepare. We are strong because we plan. And we are strong because we take care of our friends." "The Vryn are not worth this," the general shouted. "They are worth everything," Greg replied. "They showed mercy to strangers. They gave what little they had to save lives. If you cannot understand why that matters, then you understand nothing about humanity." The battle ended quickly. The Krell fleet retreated. Their empire sent diplomats instead of more soldiers. They realized that the humans were not going to leave. But the humans did not just defend the Vryn. Over the next months, human ships brought supplies, technology, and teachers. They helped the Vryn build defense stations. They shared medical knowledge. They set up trade agreements that favored the Vryn. Sophie Grant stayed on the Vryn homeworld to coordinate the assistance programs. The matriarch watched as human engineers worked alongside Vryn workers to build new structures. "This is too much," the matriarch said one day. "Telex shared water. You are rebuilding our entire civilization." Sophie shook her head. "No, matriarch. Telex did not just share water. He shared hope. He showed that in a cold and dangerous galaxy, kindness still existed. He proved that strangers could be trusted. That is worth more than water. That is worth everything we are giving you." Kyle Morrison walked up with his datapad. "The new defense grid is online. The Krell will not threaten you again. And we have established permanent trade routes. The Vryn will be economically stable within 5 years." The matriarch bowed deeply. "How can we ever repay this debt?" Sophie smiled. "You already did, 174 years ago. This is not creating a new debt. This is us settling the old one." News of the intervention spread across the galaxy quickly. Other species watched in amazement and confusion. The humans had spent enormous resources to save a species that could give them nothing in return. It made no sense by galactic standards, but to the humans, it made perfect sense. They had a saying that Sophie shared with the matriarch before she left. "We remember. We always remember, and we repay our debts in full." Admiral Greg Palmer stood on the bridge one last time before his fleet departed. He looked at the Vryn planet below, now safe and protected. He thought about his grandmother, who had been one of the explorers saved by Telex. She had died when Greg was young, but she had told him the story many times. "We did it, Grandma," he whispered. "We kept the promise." The human fleet turned toward home. Behind them, the Vryn people celebrated. They had been saved by humans who remembered a kindness from long ago. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Maya Chen looked at the long list on her screen and smiled. She worked as a human trade coordinator, and her job had suddenly become very busy. The Vryn intervention had changed everything. Now every species in the galaxy was asking the same question. Did we ever help the humans? Some species were asking because they were curious. Others were asking because they were afraid. President Rick Coleman sat in his office on Earth meeting with his advisors. "The Helix Confederation wants to know if we remember them," he said, reading from a report. "The Zorlax clans are fortifying their borders. The Thaxian Collective sent us a gift basket." One advisor laughed. "A gift basket?" "They are nervous," Rick explained. "Everyone is trying to figure out what we remember and what we plan to do about it." Maya Chen entered the room. She carried several data pads. "Mr. President, we need to start making our repayments. The archive has identified 237 species that have helped us since first contact. Some in big ways, some in small ways. And we are going to repay all of them?" Rick asked. "Every single one," Maya confirmed. "That is what we do." The first repayment went to the Thaxian Collective. 80 years ago, a Thaxian nurse named Kelleth had worked at a refugee center. When human refugees arrived, fleeing from a colony disaster, Kelleth had treated them with dignity and respect. She had worked extra shifts to help them. She had even donated her own money to buy medicine for human children. Kelleth was still alive, now very old and retired. She was surprised when Ambassador Carlos Rivera showed up at her home. "Kelleth," Carlos said, bowing respectfully, "on behalf of humanity, we want to thank you for what you did 80 years ago." The old Thaxian looked confused. She spoke in a soft voice that clicked and hummed. "I only did my job. I was a nurse. I helped people." "You did more than your job," Carlos replied. "You showed kindness. You gave your own money to help strangers. We remember that." He presented her with a gift. It was not just a gift for her, but for her entire species. Humans had developed new medical technology, and they were giving it to the Thaxian Collective for free. The technology could cure 3 diseases that had plagued the Thaxians for centuries. Kelleth cried, "This is too much. I only helped a few people." "You helped them when they had nothing," Carlos said gently. "You treated them like they mattered. That is worth more than money. That is worth everything." The next repayment went to a small scientific outpost on a distant moon. 50 years ago, human scientists had visited the outpost to study unusual minerals. The outpost, run by a species called the Dendari, had shared all their research data freely. Most species charged fees for such information, but the Dendari had refused payment. "Science should be free," the Dendari head scientist had said. "We all learn better when we share." Now, 5 decades later, human ships arrived at that outpost. They brought construction equipment, power generators, and terraforming technology. Within months, the small outpost became a full planetary research station. The Dendari scientists could barely believe it. "We shared some data files," one Dendari said to Maya Chen. "You are giving us a planet." Maya smiled. "You shared your knowledge without asking for anything in return. You believed in cooperation over profit. We are repaying that belief." The repayments continued across the galaxy. Each one was different. Each one was suited to what that species needed most. A species that had given humans shelter during a war received new agricultural technology. A species that had defended human traders from pirates received advanced shield generators for their ships. But the strangest thing to other species was how humans calculated the repayments. It was not equal trade. It was something else. Ambassador Carlos Rivera tried to explain it at a galactic summit. Representatives from dozens of species listened carefully. In most galactic cultures, you trade equally, Carlos said. If someone gives you 10 credits worth of help, you give them 10 credits back. That is fair trade. The representatives nodded. That made sense to them. Humans do not think that way, Carlos continued. We look at why someone helped us. We look at the spirit of the gesture. Someone who helps us when we are strong is appreciated, but someone who helps us when we are weak receives something much greater. He showed them examples. A wealthy species that had lent money to humans at fair interest rates received thanks and the money back with interest. But a poor species that had shared food during a famine received enough technology to end their own poverty forever. You measure kindness by sacrifice, said a reptilian diplomat. The more someone sacrificed to help you, the more you give back. Exactly, Carlos confirmed. Keleth the nurse gave her own money when she did not have much. The Dendari shared knowledge when they could have sold it. The Vryn shared water when it meant they would suffer. These acts mean more to us than simple transactions. Some species started to understand, others remained confused, a few became worried. The Helix Confederation was one of the worried ones. They had never helped humanity. In fact, they had actively blocked humans from entering certain trade routes decades ago. Now they saw what humans did for their friends, and they wondered what humans did to those who had harmed them. Their answer came from an unexpected place. Maya Chen sent them a simple message. We remember everything, both kindness and harm, but we believe in offering choices. We will contact you soon. President Rick Coleman reviewed the full list of repayments in his office. Some would take years to complete. Some were already finished. Each one was documented in the Remembrance Archive. What about the species that hurt us? His chief advisor asked. The ones that refused to help during the plague? The ones that cheated us in trade deals? The ones that sabotaged our colony ships? Rick's expression grew serious. That is a different list. A darker one. But we will handle that according to our principles, too. Revenge? The advisor asked. No, Rick said firmly. Something better. Something they will not expect. Maya Chen understood what the president meant. She had seen the dark ledger, the record of betrayals and harm. Humans remembered those too. But the repayment for those would not be violence. It would be something that confused other species even more than the kindness had. As she worked late into the night, coordinating shipments of technology and supplies to dozens of worlds, Maya thought about her grandfather. He had been on one of the colony ships that failed because another species had sold them faulty equipment. Hundreds had died, including her grandmother. Her grandfather could have been bitter. Instead, he had taught Maya a lesson. Remember the harm, but do not let it make you cruel. There is a better way. Maya was about to help show the galaxy that better way. Across space, on hundreds of worlds, species that had helped humanity were receiving unexpected gifts. Some cried with gratitude. Some felt overwhelmed. All of them learned the same lesson. Humans remembered favors, and they repaid them beyond all reasonable measure. But the galaxy was about to learn another lesson. Humans also remembered betrayals. And the way they handled those would shock everyone even more than the kindness had. Director Nathan Brooks walked into the secure room deep beneath the lunar surface. The room had no windows and only one entrance. Inside, Vice Admiral Lisa Crawford and Agent Danny Price were waiting. On the large screen in front of them was the other list, the one most people did not know about. It is time, Nathan said quietly. Lisa looked at the screen. It showed names of species, dates, and detailed records of harm done to humanity. Some entries were small, like trade cheating or broken promises. Others were large, like the hegemony. The hegemony had done something terrible 120 years ago. Human colony ships had been traveling to a new world. The hegemony sold them navigation equipment and life support systems. The equipment was faulty. 3 ships failed in deep space. 2,000 people died, including children. The hegemony leadership is gathering for an emergency council, Danny Price reported. They know we have not forgotten. What are they expecting? Lisa asked. War, Danny replied. They have been moving military forces to their borders for months. They think we are coming for revenge. Nathan smiled sadly. They do not understand us at all. Across the galaxy, the hegemony prepared for the worst. Their leader, a being called the High Sovereign, met with his military commanders. The High Sovereign was old and had been in power during the colony ship incident. The humans will attack, one commander said. They helped the weak Vryn. They will surely destroy us for what we did. The High Sovereign felt fear in his hearts. Yes, he had multiple hearts, and all of them were beating fast. Increase all defenses. Call back our trade ships. Prepare for siege. Then the message arrived. It was from President Rick Coleman himself. The High Sovereign opened it with shaking hands. The message was simple. We remember what happened 120 years ago. We remember the 2,000 lives lost. We remember the children who died scared and alone in the dark of space. We have not forgotten. We will never forget. But we offer you a choice. The High Sovereign read on, his eyes growing wider with each word. You can accept responsibility for what was done. You can work with us toward reconciliation. You can make amends. If you do this, we will help you become better. We will work with you to build trust again. The message continued. Or you can refuse. You can deny responsibility. You can ignore this offer. If you do that, we will not attack you. We will not fire a single weapon. But we will isolate you completely. No trade with us or our allies. No technology sharing. No diplomatic contact. You will be alone in the galaxy. The High Sovereign looked at his commanders. This is their revenge? A choice? On the lunar base, Lisa Crawford explained the strategy to her officers. We have already positioned ourselves for either outcome. If they accept responsibility, we begin a 50-year reconciliation program. If they refuse, we activate the isolation protocols. And the isolation protocols? One officer asked. Danny Price pulled up a map. It showed trade routes, alliances, and economic connections. Red lines appeared, showing every connection the hegemony had with the broader galactic community. We control or influence 70% of their trade partners, Danny explained. Not through threats, but through the relationships we have built. If the hegemony refuses to make amends, those partners will choose to work with us instead of them. We are not forcing anyone, Lisa added. We are simply letting our allies know who the hegemony really is and what they did. Then we let them decide. It was a strange kind of power. Not military might, but relationship strength. Humans had spent decades building friendships across the galaxy. Now those friendships gave them leverage they could have gotten no other way. The Hegemony Council met for 3 days. Some members wanted to refuse the human offer. We should not bow to these young species, they argued. But the High Sovereign had done something the others had not. He had researched human history. He learned about their concept of justice. He learned about their word, mercy. On the 3rd day, he made his decision. He sent a message to Earth. We accept responsibility. What we did was wrong. We sold faulty equipment because we wanted profit more than we valued life. 2,000 humans died because of our greed. We cannot undo this. We cannot bring them back. But we are willing to try to make it right. President Rick Coleman read the message in his office. Maya Chen stood beside him. What do you think? Rick asked her. Your grandmother died in that incident. Maya was quiet for a moment. My grandfather always said that holding on to anger only hurts yourself. He said the best revenge is to make the world better. Rick nodded. Then we begin reconciliation. The process was not easy. The hegemony had to publicly admit what they did. They had to pay reparations to the families of the victims. They had to allow human inspectors to review all their trade equipment to make sure it was safe. But humans did not just punish them. They also helped them. Human engineers worked with hegemony engineers to improve their quality control. Human teachers came to hegemony schools to talk about ethics and responsibility. Slowly, over years, trust began to build. Other species watched this carefully. Several other species on the Dark Ledger saw what happened. Some chose to reach out to humanity and admit their past wrongs. Others refused. The Caltrix Union had once refused to help human refugees during a plague, turning away ships full of sick people. When humans offered them the same choice, the Caltrix laughed. "We owe you nothing," their leader said. Humans did not argue. They did not threaten. They simply activated their protocols. Within a year, the Caltrix Union found itself cut off from major trade routes, not because humans forced anyone, but because other species chose to side with humanity. The Caltrix economy suffered. Their people struggled. 2 years later, they sent a different message. "We were wrong. We are sorry. Can we talk?" Nathan Brooks met with his team again. "The Caltrix want to negotiate." "After 2 years of isolation?" Lisa said. "Only because they are suffering." "Yes," Nathan agreed. "But they came back. That matters. We offer them the same path we offered the hegemony." Danny Price looked skeptical. "Even though they only changed because they had no choice?" "Everyone changes for a reason," Nathan said. "What matters is that they are willing to change at all. We can work with that." The galaxy was learning a strange lesson. Humans remembered harm as clearly as they remembered kindness. But their response to harm was not violence or cruelty. It was opportunity, pressure, and patience. Species that accepted responsibility and worked toward amends found humans to be supportive allies. Species that refused found themselves isolated but not destroyed. And species that eventually came back found that humans still believed in second chances. Vice Admiral Lisa Crawford gave a speech at a military academy on Mars. Young officers listened carefully. "Some people think strength means destroying your enemies," Lisa said, "but real strength is having the power to destroy and choosing not to. Real strength is offering mercy when you could offer revenge. Real strength is believing that people can change." One young officer raised her hand. "But what if they do not change? What if they keep doing harm?" Lisa's expression grew serious. "Then they isolate themselves. They make themselves irrelevant, not because we force them to, but because their own actions push everyone away. That is a kind of justice, too." President Rick Coleman sat in his office late at night. He looked at both lists, the light ledger and the dark ledger. So many names, so many stories, so much history. "We remember everything," he said to himself, "the good and the bad. We repay the good with generosity. We answer the bad with justice tempered by mercy. That is what makes us human." Maya Chen finished her work for the day. Tomorrow she would coordinate more aid shipments to species that had helped humanity. Next week, she would begin talks with another species from the Dark Ledger, one that was ready to make amends. It was hard work. It took patience and time. But it was building something new in the galaxy, a place where kindness mattered more than power, where relationships mattered more than conquest, where even enemies could become friends if they were willing to try. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the reason why. Jake Harrison was 93 years old. His hair was white and his hands shook a little when he held things. But his mind was still sharp. and his eyes still held the same determination they had 50 years ago when he first showed the Remembrance Archive to the Galactic Council. He sat in a chair on the Grand Summit Station, built in neutral space. This station had been constructed by 30 different species working together. That alone was remarkable. 50 years ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Captain Nicole Stewart stood beside him. She was young, only 30 years old, and she represented the new generation of humans. She had grown up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where remembering favors was what everyone did. "Are you ready, Ambassador Harrison?" Nicole asked gently. Jake smiled. "I am always ready, though I am not an ambassador anymore. Just an old man with stories to tell." "You are much more than that," said a voice from the doorway. The Vryn matriarch entered. She was not the same matriarch that Jake had met 50 years ago. That one had died peacefully 15 years ago. This was her granddaughter, but she carried the same title and the same wisdom. "Ambassador Harrison," the young matriarch said, bowing deeply. "Because of you, my people are alive and thriving. Because of humanity, we have a future." Jake stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. "Your people saved 3 human explorers 174 years ago. We simply returned the favor." "You did much more than that," the matriarch replied. "You changed everything." The summit hall was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Jake saw species he recognized and many he did not. The galaxy had grown larger in 50 years. More species had joined the community. All of them had learned about the human way of remembering. The summit began. Jake was the keynote speaker. Nicole helped him walk to the stage. The crowd grew silent as he began to talk. 50 years ago, I stood in a council chamber and showed you our Remembrance Archive," Jake said. His voice was old but still strong. "Many of you thought we were foolish. Some thought we were dangerous. All of you were confused." There was gentle laughter from the crowd. Many of the beings there had been present 50 years ago. "But we did what we said we would do," Jake continued. "We helped the Vryn. We repaid every favor we could find. We offered reconciliation to those who had harmed us. And something amazing happened." He paused, looking across the diverse crowd. "You started doing the same thing." Nicole activated a hologram. It showed a new database, much larger than the original human archive. This one had contributions from hundreds of species. "The Thaxian Collective now keeps their own remembrance archive," Jake explained. "So do the Dendari. So do 47 other species. You have all started tracking kindness and favors. You have all started repaying them." An elderly Thaxian stood up. Jake recognized her. It was Kelleth, the nurse who had helped human refugees 80 years ago. She was very old now, but still alive. "Ambassador Harrison," Kelleth said in her clicking voice. 20 years ago, a Dendari scientist helped my son when he was sick. Last year, my people gave the Dendari a moon for their research. We learned this from humans. We learned that kindness deserves to be remembered and repaid. Other species shared similar stories. The Dendari had helped a small insectoid species translate ancient texts. The insectoid species had later given the Dendari advanced computing technology. The Vryn had shared their trade routes with newcomers. Those newcomers had later defended Vryn merchants from pirates. A web of mutual support had grown across the galaxy. It started with humans, but now it belonged to everyone. Jake continued his speech. "We also taught you about the Dark Ledger, about remembering harm but answering it with justice and mercy, not revenge." A representative from the hegemony stood up. Jake recognized him. It was the grandson of the old High Sovereign who had accepted responsibility 50 years ago. "Ambassador Harrison," the hegemony representative said, "my grandfather made a terrible choice 120 years ago. Human colonists died because of our greed. Your people could have destroyed us. Instead, you gave us a chance to change. Today, the hegemony is a better place because of that mercy. We have our own dark ledger now. We are making our own amends to species we have harmed. Jake felt tears in his eyes. This was more than he had hoped for. Nicole Stewart took over the presentation. In the past 50 years, 312 species have adopted some form of the Remembrance Protocol. Wars have decreased by 40%. Trade has increased by 200%. Cooperative scientific projects have increased by 500%. She showed graphs and charts. The evidence was clear. The galaxy was becoming a better place. But it is not perfect, Nicole added honestly. There are still species that refuse to participate. There are still conflicts. There is still greed and cruelty. Of course there is, Jake said, stepping forward again. We never expected to create a perfect galaxy. We only wanted to create a better one, and we have. A reptilian diplomat raised his hand. Ambassador Harrison, what is humanity's next goal? You have changed our civilization. What comes next? Jake smiled. That is not up to us anymore. This belongs to all of you now. Every species that keeps a remembrance archive, every species that repays kindness and offers mercy to enemies, you are all part of this now. The summit continued for hours. Species shared their experiences with the new protocols. Some had success stories. Others had challenges and asked for advice. It felt less like a council and more like a community. During a break, Jake sat quietly in a side room. Nicole brought him water. How do you feel? She asked. Tired, Jake admitted, but happy, very happy. Your great-grandfather would be proud, Nicole said. The explorers who were saved by Telex, they started all of this. No, Jake corrected gently. Telex started this. He chose to share his water with strangers. Everything else came from that one act of kindness. As the summit ended, Jake received a final message. It was from a species humanity had never met before. They were new to the galaxy, just beginning their journey into space. The message was simple. We are alone and afraid. We do not know if anyone will help us. But we have heard stories of humanity. Stories of how you remember kindness. We ask for nothing except to know. Is this real? Do people really help each other without demanding payment? Jake read the message to the assembled summit. This is our answer, he said. He authorized immediate aid to the new species. Food, medical supplies, teachers, and advisors would be sent within a week. But then something amazing happened. Other species started volunteering too. The Vryn offered trade routes. The Thaxians offered medical support. The Dendari offered to share scientific knowledge. Even the hegemony offered construction assistance. Within an hour, 12 species had committed to helping these strangers. Nicole looked at Jake with wonder in her eyes. This is what you built, she said. No, Jake replied, his old eyes shining. This is what we all built together. 3 months later, Jake Harrison died peacefully in his sleep. He was buried on Earth with full honors. Representatives from 80 species attended his funeral. The Vryn matriarch gave the eulogy. Jake Harrison showed us that remembering kindness is not weakness, she said. It is the greatest strength. He showed us that mercy is not softness. It is courage. Because of him, because of humanity, our galaxy is a place where strangers help each other, where enemies become friends, and where kindness is valued more than conquest. Nicole Stewart inherited Jake's position. She was young but ready. On her first day, she received the same kind of message Jake had received 50 years ago. Another species in crisis, another favor to repay, another kindness to remember. She smiled and got to work. The legacy continued. Years passed. Decades passed. The Remembrance Protocol became standard across the galaxy. Children of every species learned about it in school. They learned about Telex, the Vryn merchant who shared water. They learned about Jake Harrison, who never forgot a favor. They learned that the galaxy worked best when everyone remembered to be kind. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy with weapons. They had not dominated it with superior technology. They had changed it with something much more powerful: memory, gratitude, and the simple belief that kindness should be repaid. The galaxy had become exactly what humans had hoped for: a place where favors were remembered, where debts of kindness were repaid in ways no one expected, where even enemies could find redemption, where cooperation mattered more than conquest. And it all started because 3 human explorers ran out of water and one Vryn merchant decided to share his. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes. The galaxy would remember that lesson forever.